It was supposed to be the perfect getaway. Sarah, her husband Mark, and their two friends, Jason and Emma, had rented a secluded cabin deep in the woods for a weekend of relaxation and adventure. The cabin, nestled between towering trees and near a still lake, looked idyllic online. They had all been excited to escape the noise of the city, to disconnect from their phones and just enjoy nature. But the first sign that something was off came when they arrived at the cabin. The place looked older, more run down than the photos had shown. The wooden beams were creaky, and the air inside felt damp and musty, like it hadn't been lived in for years. There was something unsettling about the silence that surrounded the cabin. The only sound was the occasional rustle of leaves from the wind. Mark shrugged it off. "We're just not used to being away from all the noise," he said. The others agreed, trying to push the uneasy feeling aside. They unpacked and started settling in, planning hikes and late-night fires by the lake. That night, they gathered around the fireplace, laughing and telling stories. But as the fire burned low, strange things began to happen. Jason swore he saw something moving in the trees, just beyond the glow of the firelight. At first, everyone laughed it off. Just shadows or animals in the woods. But then, Emma heard it too. The soft crunch of footsteps on leaves, slow and deliberate, as if someone or something was circling them. The four of them grew quiet, straining to hear. Mark grabbed a flashlight and shined it into the darkness, but nothing was there. "Probably just a deer," he said, trying to sound confident, but his hand was shaking slightly. The unease grew as the night went on. Around 2 a.m., they heard a loud knock on the cabin door. It was a hard, deliberate bang that echoed through the quiet woods. Sarah, startled, looked at Mark. "Who could that be? We're in the middle of nowhere." Mark grabbed a kitchen knife and cautiously approached the door. He opened it slowly, but there was no one there. Just the empty woods staring back at him, bathed in moonlight. But something was wrong. The door frame had scratch marks on it, like someone had dragged their fingernails across the wood. Suddenly, the door slammed shut on its own. The friends jumped, their hearts pounding. Emma ran to the window and gasped. "Look," she whispered, pointing toward the tree line. They saw a figure, tall and gaunt, standing just at the edge of the trees. It had no face, just a dark, featureless silhouette. The figure didn't move. It just stood there watching. Terrified, they bolted the doors and closed the windows, but the strange knocking continued throughout the night, always from different parts of the cabin. It felt like the entity was toying with them, slowly wearing down their nerves. By dawn, they had made up their minds to leave, but when they opened the door to escape, they found strange symbols carved into the porch. And then they realized there were no tracks in the dirt leading away from the cabin. The thing had never walked away. Lisa and her brother David had been road tripping for days. It was a spontaneous vacation, driving from state to state with no real plan, just exploring. After hours of driving through the desert, they were tired, hungry, and desperate to find a place to rest. They finally spotted an old crumbling motel off the highway, a place called the Desert View Inn. The neon sign flickered, casting eerie shadows on the cracked pavement. They were the only guests checking in that evening, which was strange. The receptionist, an old man with a faraway look in his eyes, handed them the key to room 104. "Don't wander after midnight," he warned, his voice low and gravelly. Lisa and David exchanged confused glances, but didn't question it. The room was old but clean enough. They were too exhausted to care, collapsing onto the beds and falling asleep almost immediately. At around 2 a.m., Lisa woke to a soft knock on the door. She froze, her heart pounding. The motel was nearly empty, so who could be knocking? She glanced at David, who was still fast asleep. The knocking came again, louder this time. Lisa grabbed her phone and crept toward the door. "Who is it?" she called out. But there was no reply, just a soft scraping sound, like nails scratching against the door. Suddenly, the door handle began to turn slowly, as if someone was trying to open it from the outside. Panicking, Lisa threw the deadbolt across just in time. Whoever it was, they weren't stopping. The door rattled violently now, as if someone or something was trying to force its way in. Lisa backed away from the door, trembling. David, wake up! David jolted awake, groggy and confused. What's going on? Lisa explained in a rushed whisper, her eyes wide with fear. The rattling finally stopped, and they sat in tense silence for several minutes. Just when they thought it was over, there came a loud crash from the bathroom. The mirror had shattered, shards of glass scattered across the floor. Written on the fogged-up glass was a single word: leave. Terrified, they packed up their things and bolted for the door. But when they stepped outside, the motel looked different, older, more decayed. The sky had turned an ominous red, and the landscape around them had transformed into a barren wasteland, as if they had stepped into another world. They ran to the front desk, but the old man was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was a faded newspaper article on the counter with the headline, "Motel closed after mysterious disappearances." Panicking, Lisa looked at the date of the article. It was from 50 years ago. They realized with growing dread that they were trapped in the motel, in some twisted version of reality, with no way out. As the sun set once again, the knocking resumed, this time from all around them, and they knew deep down they wouldn't make it through another night.